Hello and welcome to our movie recap channel. Today I'm going to explain a horror drama movie called Insidious, The Red Door from 2023. I hope you enjoy the video, so let's start. The movie begins with the conclusion of the second movie, where Dr. Carl is erasing the memories of Josh Lambert and his son Dalton about a different dimension known as the Further. They were mixed up in paranormal activities that involved evil spirits and demons, and they wanted a normal life, which is why they were erasing their memories. All they'll recall is Dalton's coma and his awakening, and they will get rid of everything else they experienced. After 10 years, the film returns to show Josh and his family attending his mother Lorraine's funeral. Here, we learn that over these years, Josh has had a divorce from his wife, Rhiannon. Despite Josh and Renee's divorce, she invites Dalton and his siblings, Collie and Foster, to the funeral. She asks Josh why he doesn't drive Dalton to school after he thanks her for planning his mother's funeral. Since he doesn't want to take him to school, he really doesn't have a response to this. Renee leaves the area after telling him to give it some thought because she spots someone else there she wants to talk to. Josh now chooses to approach Carl after noticing him, as he is ready to leave. Carl responds that he only knew his mother before they lost contact when he is asked if he knows Josh. Josh then reluctantly texts Dalton to ask if he's okay with Josh driving him to college before heading to his car. Then, a hazy walking figure is seen behind Josh's car. Dalton replies to Josh's text, puts his phone away, and the figure appears to vanish. Josh shows Dalton a power station his mother got for him on the way to his liberal arts school. Dalton starts to hang his drawings on the wall, and Josh notices and appreciates one of his sketches of his mother. According to Dalton, it's from a picture he discovered at the house, and for the previous few years, it seemed like she was concealing something. After that, Dalton displays his artwork and drawings, which feature his mother and siblings but exclude Josh. He feels a little weird about this but knows exactly why Dalton does not feel attached to him, so he tries to explain. Josh explains that he has been a little confused the past few years and has not been able to manage time for Dalton and his siblings, but he doesn't blame him for this. At that moment, Chris Winslow, Dalton's roommate, walks into the room. He feels confused because he thought Dalton would be a boy because of her name. Chris says she will return as soon as she exits the room, believing she has interrupted them. Josh and Dalton argue after she leaves because Josh overheard Dalton telling his mother that he didn't want to take him to school. Josh becomes enraged and accuses him of being ungrateful, to which Dalton responds that he now knows why his mom divorced him. Then, Josh walks away and the two of them feel bad in private. Later that night, during a get-to-know-you game that Chris and Josh are playing, he confesses to her that he can't recall the exact moment he turned 10. He doesn't even recall being ill, despite spending a year in a coma. Chris turns out the lights in the room after a while before going to bed, but Dalton tells him that he's been afraid of the dark ever since his coma, so he puts a night light next to his bed. The following day, Dalton starts his class with Professor Armagon, and she asks him to draw the drawing enthusiastically. She then gives the other students the instruction to delve deeply into their memories for their upcoming drawings. She wants them to go deeper and deeper within themselves with each number as she counts backward from 10. As she starts counting, Dalton is brought back to the Further, where he draws a door with charcoal before a demon hand pushes against him and causes him to bleed on the door. Josh also seems to be awakened by this. Josh visits the doctor later for an MRI scan. Dr. Brower explains the process and advises Josh to squeeze the call ball to get out of there if he feels like it would help him get by. As soon as the lights abruptly go out in there, Josh calls Brower to find out what's going on. He is informed that someone is with him, though, over the earbuds. Josh tries to get out by squeezing the call bell, but it doesn't work. Now that John is getting agitated and is phoning for assistance, we catch a glimpse of something behind him. Josh notices that there is someone behind him as the entity reaches out a hand to touch him, but upon turning to face the other way, he finds no one. But when he sees a demon approaching him while dressed in a hospital gown, he becomes terrified. After turning off the machine, he asks Brower what happened, to which he replies that he's been asleep for 15 minutes and that everything went according to plan with the MRI. Subsequently, he assures Josh that there is nothing to worry about and that there is nothing physically wrong with him. Additionally, he informs him that altered daily routines or elevated stress may be the cause of his memory problems. Brower recommends that he visit a grief counselor after learning about the struggles he has faced. Dalton attempts to erase the blood stain from his drawing later that evening, but the more he attempts to do so, the more it spreads, and he becomes perplexed by this. After that, he hung the drawing on the wall so he could see it clearly, and as he was looking at it, the room's lights abruptly went out. When he turns on the table lamp after pulling out his power station, he is startled to see blood on the light bulb when it turns red. He then attempts but is unable to remove the bloody handprint from Chris's bed sheet. After that, he goes to bed, but something haunts him, making him afraid. Chris returns to the room at that precise moment. She informs him that she has been assigned a new room directly above him and turns on the light. After that, she brings him to the fraternity party, where they are greeted by Nick. Dalton discovers that it's Nick's room when he and Chris sneak into one of the frat boys' rooms after growing bored there for some time. Dalton hears someone retching from a toilet as Chris exits the room and promises to return. When he arrives to check on things, he notices a man throwing up and asks if he needs any assistance. The man turns out to be a young frat pledge's spirit, and he tells him to stop. He stands up, startled, and asks him to shut the door. Dalton tries to run away, but he ducks under the bed when he hears Nick approaching his room. Dalton notices that the ghost of that guy has left the room when Nick comes in and uses the loo. Nick eventually leaves, turning out the light, and just as Dalton is about to emerge, the spirit resurfaces and pukes on him before Chris arrives to rescue him. When she asks how he's doing, he replies that he just saw something. Chris kisses Dalton to make it appear like they were just playing around after he gets up and says they have to leave. That's when they hear Nick returning to the room. After Nick makes a crude joke about Chris, she attacks him, and then she and Dalton run away. Dalton is seen working on his drawing and listening to his dad's voicemail later that evening. After a while, he begins to feel lightheaded and eventually nods off, with his room's lights going out. When he wakes up, the door behind him opens by itself, and he sees a lamp in front of him that lights up as he grabs it. He stands up and walks to the door, only to turn around and see that he is now seated on the chair. Then he enters Chris's new room and uses her keyboard to let her know he is there and to wake her up. However, he drops the keyboard and flees as she turns on the lights. Dalton tries to explain the visions he has been seeing when she returns to his room. Later, Chris investigates the astral projecting phenomenon and discovers a video featuring Elise Reiner, whom Dalton only dimly recalls, as well as a video from Tucker and Specs explaining it. With his memory becoming hazy, Josh is trying an exercise at home where he hangs up photos of his loved ones to try and remember them. The same shadowy figure that followed him to the graveyard steps closer to the window outside before it breaks through and attacks Josh. Following the chaos, Josh discovers a box marked Ben Burton. Josh investigates Ben's case because Ben was a mental health patient who took his own life. Pictures of Lorraine are also in the box, and Josh realizes that Ben is the father he never knew and was always held responsible for his mental instability. Ben believed that by taking his own life, the rest of his family would not be able to enter the further, as evidenced by the notation "This ends with me" written on the back of one of the photos. Chris comes along to help Dalton find the spirit of the dead pledge and talk to him as they slink back to Nick's room for astral projection. While Dalton is in the further, a more demonic entity attacks him, and Chris is attacked in the real world as well. She's unconscious when Nick finds her, but he gets her to wake up. Chris informs Dalton that she can no longer assist him after they are brought to the infirmary. Josh visits Renai at her home to tell her what he discovered about his father. We discover the reason behind their divorce from their conversation. Josh was drawn to look monstrous because he was chasing Renai and the kids with a hammer while being possessed by one of the demons from the further. Josh claims that in order to end things, he must return to the further. Dalton is reliving the memory of Josh attempting to harm his family in the further as well. Concurrently, a demon residing in Dalton's body attempts to assault Chris once more in the real world. After managing to locate one another, Josh and Dalton attempt to flee from a demon known as Lipstick Face. Dalton manages to escape, but Josh remains behind, believing he must put an end to the horror. After Dalton draws the red door, he finds himself there as Lipstick Face tries to break through. Dalton covers the door in his room with paint, making it vanish and trapping Lipstick Face behind it. Then, Josh seems to at last forgive Ben for leaving him when he sees Ben smiling at him in a vision. When Josh wakes up, Renai and Foster are happy to see him alive. When all is said and done, Dalton and Chris remain together. Later on, Josh seems to be working on getting back together with Renai, which could mean he moves back in with her. He has a vision of Elise speaking to him before he leaves, telling him that he and Dalton have bright futures ahead of them. Upon returning to Dalton's room, Josh discovers that Dalton has included a painting depicting the moment when Josh helped him leave the further. They both then give each other a hug as the movie ends. I hope you liked the story recap. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.